I just received this image and I'm mesmerized. What on earth is going on at Mount Vesuvius? This is just one of the volcanoes having unusual activity, and I'm going to dedicate this episode of Shed Show Talk and Span News to looking at the increasing activity around volcanoes. Some think it's a sign of the times. Let's see what we find out. Okay, first up we have the skull, the giant skull seen over Mount Vesuvius. And you guys, this is a phenomena, just one of many that's going on right now that have people really curious, and we're breaking here at Shed Show Talk. Look at this face in the smoke. Now this is a forest fire raging around Mount Vesuvius, and there have been 23 plus fires started by what Italy believes to be criminal activity. But they're enraged. I mean, the environment minister from Italy was saying anyone who lit fire to Mount Vesuvius truly deserves at least 15 years in jail. There's an entire search going on for the people who started these fires, and I don't know if the fire's angry or what's going on, but to see such an amazing, like, look at the size of this. Look at the size of that face. That's incredible. I mean, I've wondered, is that a lion? I see more of a lion than a giant skull myself, but when I saw this image, I was truly breathless. I mean, here you've got Mount Vesuvius, right? So look at the height here. I'm just gonna try to use my whiteboard skills. Sorry, guys. I'm sure I'll get comments about that. And then sort of consider the difference here in height between the two, right? So you're looking at some significant difference. I mean, obviously you can see some fires down here, and these are huge. These are all huge fires happening all around Mount Vesuvius. And Mount Vesuvius has its own legendary history, and it just makes me wonder what's going on right here. I mean, that's astounding. The size of that face in the clouds, I can only imagine what locals are thinking and feeling, particularly those who are very superstitious about Mount Vesuvius because of its history. And I might get into that in another video, but right now I actually want to show you something else. Okay, this is what I wanted to show you. In the Daily Mail article, there's this spectacular photo on the left about Mount Vesuvius fires, and I know I shouldn't laugh because it's really quite serious, but I'm laughing more so at the imagery in the clouds and what people are going to make of it. But what do you guys think that is? I mean, goodness, if you're to see these things in the sky, I mean, this is what inspires people to write novels and legends and mythology, because it just looks like there's these giants in the sky. I mean, you've got the giant on the left with these hulky shoulders and bent forward head. And then on the other side, you've got this giant skull. Personally, I think it looks more like a lion, but I'm sure you'll let me know what you think in the comments, and I look forward to reading them. But, you know, what a time to be a creative writer. You could do so much with this imagery. But deep down, people are asking, you know, with such a significant volcano area, you know, are the wildfires another sign? Now this is the Bogoslof volcano, and this is west of Alaska in the North Pacific there, and it has been very active lately. Recently there were reports of a 30,000-foot plume of volcanic ash going into the sky that triggered a massive warning for the aviation industry. But if you take a look over in the horizon here, and yes, I know I'm using my whiteboard skills again, but you can see the snowy capped mountains off in the distance. This volcano might seem small in this photo, but it's definitely creating waves in terms of activity in the sky. And CNN posted a fantastic map, so I'm showing you here. And they just posted this a few days ago, but you can actually see this string of islands. It's really quite a beautiful image showing, strangely enough, how close those continents are. And that's not often something we think about. I mean, look at the size of Alaska here. And you compare it to Japan, the entire country of Japan. You know, Alaska is a massive amount of land, and there's a lot of volcanic activity happening in the region, but most currently Bogoslof is raising some eyebrows, and there's been questions about whether or not it's going to have another massive explosion. So we looked at a forest fire with a giant skull in the sky around Mount Vesuvius. We then looked at briefly just some of the information about the volcanic activity off of the Alaskan coast with Bogoslof, and now you're looking at a volcano that has increased its activity in Guatemala. And I was reading a news article about this, you guys, and Basically what they're saying is that there's been an increase in activity here, and they say it could erupt at any moment in Guatemala. Their concern, and I'll just highlight it here and pull up a news article for you guys, is that the projectiles that can come out of volcanoes are extremely dangerous. And here's a news article I got from the Express talking about the concern of ballistic materials. But what I also find really interesting is that right below this article, talking about the possibility of an explosion in Guatemala, there's a video for volcanic activity in Indonesia. So now we've had activity up by Alaska, Guatemala, and Indonesia. Those are separate volcanic activity areas, and I'm really quite curious as to what's going on. I mean, when it comes to volcano season, one never knows what's going to happen, and you can see people trying to figure out what to do in response to this volcanic activity, whether or not they should start fleeing or if it's simply off-gassing or what's happening. Of course, as you read down here, it says experts say there's no cause for concern, but I guess that's relative to each person involved. Clearly, the people holding the camera are feeling some concern, and there is some panic because the volcano is starting to rumble. So this is Indonesia. Next up, we're going to take a look at Mount St. Helens. Mount St. Helens is an iconic North American volcano and one of the few that's even in the consciousness of North Americans. Typically when North Americans are thinking about volcanoes, they're thinking about volcanoes in other locations, not the ones in their backyard. In fact, I think John Oliver did a clip talking about nuclear power plants that are sitting on earthquake zones and within radius of volcanic activity, and it sort of just made me shudder thinking, good grief, are they prepared for a major cataclysmic event such as Mount Helens rebooted or reloaded? And that's exactly what they're talking about in the news. Take a look here, you guys, at the size of this crater. It's hard to give perspective without another photo here, but literally the explosion of Mount St. Helens blasted off the top of the mountain and sent it a great distance. You can take a look at the photos online of the aftermath of Mount St. Helens, but talk about apocalyptic warning. It's really quite shocking to take a look at it. And I was reading this article. Take a look at this. It says that Mount St. Helens has recently been linked to more than 100 tremors. And it's, oh, there's my whiteboard skills. But Mount St. Helens is recharging, and that's the word I wanted to look at. It's recharging. There's activity happening at Mount St. Helens. But again, who's actually paying attention? Okay, it's not just Mount St. Helens, it's not Guatemala, it's not just Alaska. There's volcanic activity happening everywhere, including Mexico. So here's one of my favorite volcanoes. It's nicknamed the Popo, which you heard us talk about in a UFO video that I did with Paul. And Popocatepetl is known for paranormal activity, UFO sightings, sightings of unknown life forms and other things. So it's definitely a curious place to pay attention to. But here in the Express, they posted a video of a recent eruption, and take a look at this right up in here. Just look at the fire. I'm going to play that again because, I mean, it just happens in an instant. And this isn't a major eruption. This is considered a minor eruption. It's just spewing ash and releasing some gases and heat and fire. But just look at that in the sky. Talk about a sign of the times there. If you were living in the area around Popocatepetl, I can tell you you'd be paying attention to it right now, listening for the rumbles. And I've spent some time around volcanoes, and you also notice if there's some rumbling, you'll actually see black ash in the air, which is quite a phenomena to experience for the first time. And definitely brings home the fact that volcanoes may have been sleeping largely for the past chunk of time, but things are stirring. Okay, what you're looking at next are photos from a Japanese volcano, and I'm not going to say the name correctly. I always struggle with its name. I'll post it here in a second, but this volcano is known for its incredible electrical storms, which you can see in these photos. I mean, talk about awe-inspiring, terrifying, and majestic. You want a sign of the times. This volcano is definitely one to pay attention to, and it did have some serious activity back in June. But you guys, they're believing that more activity is coming. And there's sort of an interesting website that I happened upon while I was looking up some information for you. And right here, I've just popped it on the screen. There's a group called the Watchers, and they actually post what they believe. They say they're watching the world evolve and transform, and they're posting different information about these volcanoes, and they have aerial shots and stuff like that. But they talked about the major explosion in June, and they say that basically they're still remaining on alert and continuing the alert for this volcano. So there's been surveys done, and obviously there will be ongoing watching of this volcano. But um, you guys, the more I look at the volcanoes and I read the reports, people are watching around the world at their particular volcano, and they understand the power that these things hold. And it just makes me wonder what is truly going on that's triggering all of these. Clearly, the volcanic ranges around the world are having increased activity, and it's sending shockwaves through the earth and in other ways. And I'd love to know what you guys think is going on, particularly about this giant skull in Mount Vesuvius. Do you think it's a sign of the times? Do you think it's an omen? Do you think it's a predictor of things to come? Let me know in the comments section. My name is Beth.